and welcome to GameGuru Classic and GameGuru Max broadcast number 110. That's right, 110 broadcasts and going. So, I just want to do a quick sound check to make sure that everybody can hear me loud and clear. And once we know that everyone can hear my voice, I can move on to the subjects at hand. We can hear you, we can hear you. Yep, we can hear you. Thank you very much for confirming that. The format of this live broadcast, super simple, split into two sections. The first section, we normally show a demo, and then the second half is a Q&A, where I'll answer some questions that you might have. If you do have a question, just stick a question mark at the end of the sentence, so we can scroll through the live chat during this session, and obviously later when I get to look at it. I have team members on hand who might be able to answer your question before we get to the Q&A, just for expediency, so check out those. But don't worry, the questions that can't be answered, they'll be repeated when we get to the Q&A, and I can answer them then. This week's broadcast is a little different, probably to compensate for all of the demos that have been showed in the last few weeks. This time it's mostly a news roundup. Usually there is a demo because there's an impending update or a release or something like that, and something cool to show. This week it's basically source code, and there isn't really much to excite the senses when you just pour through hundreds and thousands, potentially millions of lines of source code, and I know that's not really too exciting, so I'm just going to stick to the headlines. And the fruit of all of that boring source code stuff that you won't be able to appreciate in terms of a visual context will actually materialize in cool functionality and features and optimizations and faster games at the end of the day. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But first, let's go into GameGuru Classic Land and the news that's going on there. Let me just go to my first screen. Anyone who may be familiar with GitHub, this is our GitHub issues board, and I've filtered it out for GameGuru Classic bugs that have been reported. There's currently 16, however 4 of which are still waiting to be confirmed. Now, I think the original authors probably aren't watchers of this broadcast, so if anyone can just go into these 4, try and reproduce the bug, and if you can't reproduce it, we're going to call them fixed, and then I'll mark them off, which would leave us with 12 bugs. There's a couple of the things we're waiting on information from, those are fine, and so this will be the focus of the GameGuru Classic side, eliminating the remaining 12 bugs, or at least marking them as fixed but needs confirmation, and that will go out initially as a beta and a public preview, and then once we've confirmed the lion's share of those bug fixes, then we'll release it to GameGuru Classic users everywhere. Another piece of news on the GameGuru Classic side, there is a new GameGuru Classic DLC on the way. I'd like to have revealed more and even shown some screenshots, but the ink isn't dried on the contract, so I want to be fair and not announce it until it's official. So all I can say is there is an DLC coming. I just can't tell you what it is or when it's going to be released. So keep an eye out for that. We'll definitely be putting it into the news. And finally, a question, I think it came up earlier today, and it suddenly occurred to me that there's a lot of cool media and content that maybe a lot of more recent visitors to GameGuru Classic don't know about. The predecessor, that is to say, the game maker that came before GameGuru Classic, was a product called FPS Creator. And before we left it to go on to bigger and better game makers, we made it open source. And by that time, we had over 77 model packs. And thanks to our own generosity, because a lot of them we created ourselves, and enormous generosity from the original artists who created them, we've made them freely available to anybody who wants them. Only, maybe they're hidden in the internet. So here we are. It starts at model pack 1. There are some gaps because we couldn't locate the artists. This goes back a long time, probably 8 years worth of model creation, all the way through to model pack 77. They're all zipped up. You just have to click, download and extract. And these should be, I don't know, a little codicil there, should be compatible with GameGuru Classic. So if you are interested in scouting around for some ancient legacy art, you'll see a lot of duplications, I think, with, say, the expansion pack that we give for free to all GameGuru Classic users, but you might find some little nuggets in here as well. So if you really want to spend a weekend pouring through lots of old media to see if there's anything you can use to expand your classic projects, this is a nice place to check out. I just wanted to make mention because I don't think we've mentioned the GitHub FPS Creator Classic Repository and all its model packs in over 100 broadcasts. So nice little nugget of information there for you. So without further ado, let's get on to what I think most of you want to hear about, which of course is GameGuru Max. Okay, the big news. For those who don't tune into news section, which we release, it's also posted on the Steam discussions news section, and I think some other social bits and pieces as well. The big news, or at least big for me because it means more coding time, is we're moving to Steam only distribution. So for the longest time we had a non-Steam version, and what basically that meant is we had to do 2 separate sets of builds, 2 separate sets of uploading files and testing and all the rest of it. And so it kind of made sense to say, you know what, we can rescue all of that redundant duplicate, build it twice, and put all that energy into fixing bugs faster and adding more things faster. And so that prompted the decision to go to a Steam only build. We also have a better infrastructure on Steam. I've noticed that there's still work to be done on the non-Steam auto updater where it's missing files or corrupting files. Steam has no such problem. It's battle hardened. When we release how to build, it'll work. All your files are correct. If they're not, it has an internal validation system where it can repair files if they're missing or corrupt. So we're moving to that. The good news is instead of the wait every 2 weeks for an update, we're going to start releasing more updates sooner in the form of betas, public previews, and then finally, once all that testing and it's settled down as a stable build, released to the general public so everyone can access the update. So you don't have to wait if there's a bug that we fix, you don't have to wait like 10 more days to get the fix. Once the fix is done, we'll mark it up on the issues board and we put it out onto a Steam build, and you can get access to that update a lot sooner. And then if you just want to stick to the public ones, then those are the stable ones, the ones where it's been fixed and tested by a lot of people before you get your hands on it. So that's what we're going to do. More updates, but in the forms of betas, which you can think of as experimental, probably broken. Public previews, where it has enough testing where you can rely on it, at least for your day-to-day development stuff. And then the public one, that's the one that most people just want to get the auto update and it improves the software and doesn't break the software. So those are the 3 kinds of builds that we're putting out. Another big announcement, if we just scroll down a bit, is this. Now, just like GameGuru Classic, we're not open sourcing anything, but what we are doing is revealing the source code, allowing the community to download a fork of all the source code, compile it, and then be able to have your own executable of GameGuru Max that can be dropped into your Steam build, and it means you can add your own functionalities. Now, that's not to say that we're deferring responsibility for adding code. We're doing quite a lot of adding code right now, but we're still a small team. And what GameGuru Classic has already proved, that even though we can still work on bug fixes, etc., if more people have access to the same code base and those code additions or fixes or changes are solid and valuable, they go into the official version. So what it means, upshot, is you get more functionality quicker. So that's why it's early doors, but I think it's the right thing to do. Let's open up the source code. Let's have people go in, check it out, and if you want to add a little bit on the edge and say, right, I've done this, I couldn't wait for you, Lee, so I've written it, here it is, I'm using it for my project, but I think the rest of the community would enjoy it, so here it is, I've committed it as a branch. Then once it's in a branch, I'll test it, and if it doesn't destabilize the software, and obviously with permission, then it goes into the core product, and you get more functionality sooner because of that. Now, the version that's up there now, just click on this last one, the GameGuru Max repository. You'll find it in the Game Creators GameGuru Max. That's the location on GitHub. It's there's a good chunk of code in there, but it's what's called a preview. It's so you can just scroll through, get generally familiar with with some of the source code to GameGuru Max. The reason it's not full is we are doing something else, which is we are upgrading it to DirectX 12. Lots of different little reasons for upgrading to DirectX 12, but the short term situation is in upgrading to 12 we've broke a few things, not a lot of things, and we actually have been fixing a lot of these over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, but there's still a few things left, specifically when you want to grab a render. In the old one, in DirectX 11, we'd render to a back buffer, grab that back buffer, shrink it, post it onto an image, and then save the image or render it onto the screen. With DirectX 12, it doesn't seem as straightforward as we did it with DX11, so some new stuff is required. Possibly to create another off-screen render target, render to that, and then bounce the render target back to the main one for main rendering, and then once we have that off-screen surface, then again you can save it or use it as an image for the rest of the software, but there is no code yet for that. And in fact, the current implementation is sort of half in and half out, which of course crashes completely the software. So that's where I am today, and that's why I've got some nice shiny new demo for you. It's important that this work gets done. It's quite boring, it's all just source code, but at the end of it we'll actually have a DirectX 12 implementation of GameGuru Max. We've already done some performance profiling, and there isn't a significant improvement in performance, as I suspected. Many moons ago, a lot of users saying, go to DirectX 12, it's faster. Not true, not true at all. It's just a different implementation, different kind of abstraction between 11 and 12, but the what you're asking the graphics card to do, the amount of it, doesn't substantially change. It's just a change of data structure. Sometimes you can get a few wins, sometimes it makes it even slower. The reason for DirectX 12, one of the big reasons, is we want to keep up to date with the Wicked engine. The Wicked engine has been stomping ahead, adding new features, new exciting things that you might want to see, and Wicked engine discontinued support for DX11, which is what we were sitting on. So that was a big reason to go up to DX12. Another important reason for DirectX 12 is we needed a good upscaler. What's an upscaler? You can render to a small screen and then stretch it out into a big screen, and it preserves the quality. Sounds weird, I know. Usually when you do a big stretch, it blurs out all of the detail. But modern upscalers can preserve that detail in a very clever way and give you a performance boost. Why do we want a performance boost? Because we want to do VR. And so that's the order. DirectX 12, so we're up to date with technology. With DirectX 12, we have access to all the major upscaler technologies, and then after the performance has improved because of that, then we can add VR. So the plan is, by the end of the month, this repo will be live. You'll be able to download a fork of it. You will be able to compile, create an executable, drop it into your GameGuru Max folder, and be able to, if nothing else, get nightly builds from every time we commit something. There's a chance you'll get it before we even put it on Steam. That's probably a rare scenario. It's more likely that if you really want to get in there and sort of add something you can only really add at the C++ level, this is how you would do it. And if you would feel, you know, it's a good idea to share it with the rest of the community, that would be awesome. But primarily, if you want to take this engine in a slightly different direction, you know, have the capability of doing it, now you get access to the full source code. So that's the work going on this week and next week. Another final question popped up, which was when we're going to get all these features added that's being added to the issues board. If we go to, not this one, it should be, in fact, no, if I just click that, it should automatically, yeah, there you go. It's automatically clicked up. The 322, which is mixed between stuff that's already fixed, bugs, feature requests, etc. If you scroll down the issues board, I don't want to dig too deep, but you should be able to find one eventually. Actually, you probably won't, because I have bugs set as the label. If I set enhancements as the label, you'll actually see all these. And the question was, when are all these going to get added to GameGuru Max? Well, the answer is bugs first, features second. There's a couple of exceptions. We want to get RPG further along, puzzle, and of course VR to get closer to the V1 of this game maker, so you have multiple genres. But before we dive off into adding all of these nice to haves, we want to fix the bugs. So as you saw, there's about 200 to 300 bugs that need to be done. I think when we get down to around 50, those 50 will probably be all low priority and very, very edge cases, and then we can start looking at the enhancements that have been requested. So we ain't ignoring them, we're just doing things in a certain order. We want to get very close to a version 1 of the game maker. We want to get rid of nearly all of the bugs that hurt, and then what's left is a big raft of feature requests on the issues board, and then we'll start putting priorities on them. Right now we're just listing them out in chronological order. So that's it for my show and tell. Mostly news, like I said, this week. Hopefully we could be able to bring you some more juicy demos in the weeks to come. So let's see if there's any worthy questions. Okay, so I'm going to dig up my live chat. I'm looking for a question from Zach. Thank you. So Zach has been recording all the questions. He's answering them as they pop along, and these are the ones that were asked almost at the beginning of the live chat and couldn't be answered. So hopefully I can answer them now. And the first of the questions from way back when is: will there be more enhancements for GameGuru Classic? No, DLC I was talking about? I'll say no more. But yeah, there's definitely enhancements in that DLC. So the answer to that question is yes. But yeah, if I want to read into the question, are we going to put as much functionality and feature work into Classic as we do Max? Probably not. We want to put all of the cool stuff in Max, the new technologies, all the crazy things. If there's any like bugs or the small bits that just need repairing and finishing off, I can see that happening in Classic Land. I also see the community stepping in, which is still a large community for GameGuru Classic users. And the source code is up to date and available. So also expect to see enhancements that way as well, that roundabout way. But is the team going to stop working on Max and go all over to Classic and start adding new features? Not as much. It'll be mostly new features from the internal team will be coming through on the Max product. So here's a question that Donald snuck in between Zach's next question. What is the next game kit theme going to be? I don't think I can answer that question. Game kits hold a very special place in my heart. A game kit is like all the little bits and pieces you need to make a little game of a particular theme. My gut feel is the next game kit will be centered around RPG, because there's a lot of assets you're going to need: graphics, characters, sounds, music, 2D graphics as well for all the in-game screens you're going to need. And I feel like a game kit would do justice to those sorts of needs. But that's just a gut feel. We do have plans. We have multiple plates spinning. But as been mentioned before, a lot of the DLCs that TGC put out there, they're all third-party content. We don't stop what we're doing to do a DLC. A DLC content package comes along, and we just mould it a little bit, do some testing, and then put it out for the community. So yeah, probably RPG, but don't quote me on that. And there's also some booster packs that are spinny, platey as well. So yeah, it won't dry up anytime soon for the content you need. But as was mentioned in the big news update that we put out there on Friday, we have made a very important TGC decision not to sell you functionality during early access. Whilst we're in the early access of GameGuru Max, there will be a DLC that gives the DLC owner a functional advantage over someone who's just got the core product. You know, DLC, sure, you could have like 20 more buildings and 70 more characters and 90 more of this and 110 more of that. But in terms of stuff like logic and things that are in the editor and stuff you can create, that is functional stuff, and that will always be released through the core product. I think it's the right decision. So I'm going to scroll to... Now, it looks like either my live chat's frozen or no one's asking any more questions. So Zach's second question from the past is, any plans for gunplay improvements, ? Which is very lacking on detail and a bit boring. Any plans for gunplay improvements? Well, I suppose there's only so much you can do with a gun. You can find one, pick it up, reload it, shoot it, and then rinse and repeat. I suppose when you mean gunplay improvements, you mean weapon degradation, so weapons will fail over time. Jamming if it overheats, which is there's a facility for that. Maybe weapons that have multiple modes, well, you have that as well. I think the patrol rifle has, you press V and it can switch between a single shot and then semi-automatic. So there are things in there, so you'll probably have to be more specific about specifically what gunplay enhancements are we currently missing, and we need them on a list. The best place to do that is in the issues board as a feature request. You know, list out all the things you want. It could be that some of them already exist. It's just not obvious when you drop the gun in what it can actually perform. Yeah, it looks like the live chat has stopped. So if anyone wants to post a question, anything, like Lee, what's your favourite colour, then I know that something else is posted. In fact, I'm going to chat into it just to see. Hello world, is anyone asking questions? Yeah. It's not frozen, smiley. Testing. Okay. So I guess, yeah, we could actually finish in 30 minutes at this rate. Okay, let me scroll back a little bit, see if there's any questions from higher up. Thank you. Not a problem. My pleasure. Let's find a question mark. Here we go. It's from Lucas. So I upload just the FPM or any other files. If the assets are all stock, then you only need to show the FPM for somebody else to enjoy your level. So you don't have to worry about textures, geometry, sounds, etc. unless it's custom. Unless you've created it yourself at some point, then whoever you're sending your level to needs that as well. Here's a question from Jaybird Max. Will GameGuru Classic be backwards compatible with DX11? GameGuru Classic is already DX11. There are no plans to make GameGuru Classic DX12. So when we've finished, GameGuru Classic will be DX11 and GameGuru Max will be DX12, which is another distinguishing difference between those two products. And Zach's answered that. So sorry, Zach, if I'm just repeating your answers. I want new questions. We have 5 more minutes. Please send Lee questions. I don't care how silly they are. Okay, here's a question from Requiem for Ravenholm. What are the best tools for editing textures and models for GameGuru Classic? You're asking the wrong person there. Strictly Coder and Programmer Art. Those are my fortes. There are much cleverer and smarter and faster artists out there. I think Photoshop, a lot of people use that for textures. Substance Painter, if you want to create textures even more appropriate to a PBR render pipeline. Blender is something I'd recommend for models. Why? Because it's free and it is absolutely awesome. Back in the day it was a bit kludgy, but now there's a massive community around Blender and you can pretty much do most of the things you can do in very expensive commercial tools. So I'd start you off with Blender and some free version of Photoshop. Not a bad place to start. Here's another question from Lucas. Can we apply any existing weapon animations to an imported new weapon? And if so, how? Not in a straightforward way, no. It's still a bit of a darker creating a weapon. That is to say, creating a weapon model, then rigging it, then animating it, then doing a gun spec to specify all the settings, and then aligning the animations with the sound effects, and then aligning all that up with functionality. It is pretty much a darker, and you have to create it from scratch. However, we are working on a new weapon system that might give you a little bit more flexibility in terms of bringing something in and turning it into a weapon, and then having that weapon in your game. Not necessarily some fiendish 18-mode super projectile weapon, but think of like a stick you can hold in your hand and hit someone over the head with. that's our starting point, and it'll give you some level of customization. But creating it from scratch, we have a guide now. On Friday we released an update and it included a guide, so look in the guides folder and there's a section on weapons and how you can get started. So that's been a long time in coming, and maybe I haven't mentioned it. I just sneak these things out. I've mentioned it now. Check out the guides folder. I think it has 4 different guides in it at the moment. Okay, looking for another question. This is from Joe. When will enemies stop attacking me through walls? That's been fixed, or at least there's been 2 separate bug reports where enemies could, in certain situations, attack you through a wall. So go check out the latest version if there's still a bug. What we would need is an issue board that shows the step-by-step, but also include the FPM using only stock media so we can see it happening at this end and fix it. One of the things that you might find is you've got 2 chain link fences, but you've left a gap in the middle. There's a raycast that can happen from the enemy to the player, and they can attack you because they think they can see you through that gap. Just to make sure that there is no gap, and then the enemy won't be able to initiate an attack in the first place. Okay, questions. Who's got another one for me? Here it is from Fearless Wee. When do you think merging with the latest Wicked will be done? Also, what's keeping VXGI from being added at the moment? Because I don't know what VXGI is. I'm sure it's very clever. There is a lot of GI techniques out there for everyone else who doesn't know. GI, Global Illumination. It's the next step. It's the next further step away from light mapping or baking lights into your scene. Global Illumination is let's just light everything in real time. Max does a little bit of GI. It's not comprehensive, but it will let you add a lot of lights and have a lot of shadows to have some nice realistic lighting. But there is a bit of a performance hit. Advanced GI has even more of a performance hit, which requires a higher end graphics card. So we're not super eager to go to full-on ray tracing GI at the moment. So if it's one of the more advanced ones, the VXGI, yeah, you might want to not hold your breath on that one. But as to merging with the latest Wicked engine, closer than you might think, actually. Still going to do some DX12 finishing off to make sure that what we have today runs exactly like it did with DirectX 11 and there's no holes in the functionality. But once that's done, the repository that we have, the fork of Wicked, and the latest one shouldn't be too different. The last time we did it was a bit of a nightmare because a lot of the infrastructure changed and the merge was basically line by line to get it all running again. I suspect this time it'll be a little bit easier. I think merging 2 DX12 with just some very careful additions and modifications shouldn't be a nightmare. I'm not saying it's easy, but yeah, it's certainly on the cards. And the reason I say sooner rather than later is it kind of does make sense, does it not? That if there are performance improvements and fixes, not to mention additions, merging it now and getting access to those just makes sense. If the work's already been done and the code is available, why not merge to it? But like I said, we want to get DX12, what we have today, working. Once that's done and we merge, we'll know what's broken because it broke. But that's only temporary. And then when we finish, we should be on a much, much newer version of the Wicked engine, which I think everyone will be really happy about. Okay, looking for another question. A lot of questions. When I pleaded for questions, thank you very much for responding, but I'm not sure we're going to fit all into the next 1 minute. So let's try and find a few more. Here's one. Here's from Duke229. Well, when will you release a fix for GameGuru Classic users so they can finally play multiplayer on custom maps again? Yeah, no ATA on that. It's definitely on the list. And I'm not sure whether we complete the Steam multiplayer fix, because I think some underlying changes have happened to the API since it was originally done, and it might be a lot harder to sort of get that fixed up again. Or another option is to move to Photon, which is a completely different way of doing it, with the additional bonus that you don't need Steam to run your multiplayer games. So you can share your multiplayer games that you made in GameGuru Classic with your friends, and your friends wouldn't need Steam or GameGuru Classic to play that multiplayer game. So yeah, it's a different direction, but the potential advantage might be worth it. If we're going to spend time on multiplayer, why not spend a little bit more time and have that advantage? So that's basically one of the reasons for the delay. We need to find out what is the smart move, which direction should we go in. Here's another question from Joe. Is the radar HUD seen last week integrated and customizable? It's customizable as any other behavior. The compass itself was a behavior created by Necrim59, and the graphics are available in the image bank. You can change those images to your own compass and your own tags. You can reuse the behavior, just change the images, and you've customized it. Now, there's going to be a good percentage of users who say, I don't want to do that, I don't want to go into scripts. You just do voice-activated customizations. What we are going to do before version 1 is an improved screen editor, and that screen editor will let you bring up a screen, see the compass, click on the compass, and then change its image, or its size, or its color, or its transparency. So you don't need to worry about going into some script or anything like that, or finding an image in a folder somewhere. It's actually part of the screen editor for your main game screen. So that's on its way. So you can do it now, sure, but if you wait a bit, then we're going to make it a lot easier for you to change things like that. But it's just a regular behavior. It's a behavior that uses images, places them on the screen. It's quite exciting just how powerful behaviors are these days. Okay, looking at the clock, we've just passed the 30-minute mark. I'll find a few more questions, and then I'll do my usual who hasn't asked a question yet. Next question is another one from Duke229. What's your summary of this year so far? Happy with the progress or not? Very happy with the progress. There was quite a lot of work and testing, etc. Now I'm at the point where I can ram off on one hand the things I want to do before I call it a version 1. Full RPG gameplay, full puzzle gameplay, you know, balance this on that side or press 5 buttons in a certain order, and VR. One of the things I want out of GameGuru Max is that it's one of the choices you would choose if you want to make a virtual reality game fast. Obviously, all the major game makers give you the ability to create VR, but I want you to make a VR game in 10 minutes, or at least get into VR within 10 minutes of plugging your headset in. And that's on one hand. 1, RPG, 2, puzzle, 3, VR. Now, you could include the pillars of performance improvement and lower system compatibility for 5, but it's still on one hand. And if I get all those 5, then I call that a pretty decent version 1. Notwithstanding the 200-300 enhancement feature requests that were currently on our issues board, but there is a lot of overlap with those recommendations. Okay, another question. No questions. Lots of smiley faces. Another one from Joe. When will my zombie stop getting stuck in my stir banister? Yeah, the nav mesh is pretty good, but it's not infallible. You have to design your models in such a way that the nav mesh can see the model and then generate its nav mesh so zombies can walk up and down and it's not too steep and it's not too shallow, etc. Sounds like a custom model, and then it gets pretty tricky. In that case, just send me the model. Send me the FBM that includes the model that you've created and one zombie. And that zombie trying to get up the stairs. Then I'll just be able to run the level, see it, and then break it down and find out why exactly they're being very friendly with the banister. It could be something simple or something very intricate. We have solved a lot of nav mesh related character navigation stuff, so it could be a really simple answer or a little piece of advice. So let's find 2 questions from people who haven't asked a question before during our live chat. And it is Keith C, who says, what did I miss? I'm not going to waste one of the 2 questions. There's a YouTube channel that we have. We record all our live broadcasts and you can watch them all. I don't think you want to watch all 110, but you can certainly go back in time once I post this in about an hour and you can watch the broadcast from the beginning. Who wasn't I? Here we go. This is from Pan. How will we get Steam version if we purchase GG Max on your website? We're going to issue on the end of this month, 1st of September, everyone who's not got a Steam key for the GameGuru Max products will get a Steam key automatically. We're going to set up a system which just gives you a Steam key, converts your purchases, and then all you got to do is take that Steam key, go onto the Steam client, enter the key, and it will install it onto your computer. And that includes the DLCs as well. If you've bought non-Steam DLC, you've got keys for them as well. So don't worry about it. We've got you in hand, and we're not removing anything from our system until we're absolutely confident that the transition was painless for everyone. So that's how it goes. We're taking care of that as an automated process. You would just get a notification when your key is available towards the end of the month. And the last question from someone who hasn't asked a question yet. Yeah, Keith managed to get in the last question. I did ignore his first one, but this one is perfectly valid. We're using Wicked's full culling system. I don't know that we are, actually. We do have an object occlusion culling system. I presume you mean occlusion rather than culling. Culling is simply the art of hiding all the polygons you can't see because they're facing the opposite direction and should not and cannot be rendered. But object occlusion is in effect. Whether we're using the Wicked one or one of our own, can't remember. There are a number of occlusion coding techniques already in the engine, and we're using certainly one of them. Whether we're using the Wicked one, not sure. Are we using the very latest Wicked engine occlusion system? Probably not. I think the last time we did a merge was best part of a year or half a year. It was a long time ago. So if this is a recent addition, I think the answer to that one is probably no. So I'm looking at the live chat. There are still a few more questions, but unfortunately I just ran out of time to answer them. So if you really, really want to ask a question, you can do it through the socials. Or if you want to put yourself through it again, you can join us again next week. We're happy to answer more questions live as part of our live broadcast session. So until next week, which will be Wednesday, 7 p.m. BST, I hope you've enjoyed the broadcast, and I'll speak to you all again soon. So have a great rest of week, and I'll speak to you all next week. Okay, bye-bye.